The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum that echoed through the ancient halls of Station Concordia. Ambassador Minji Kong walked forward, her footsteps quiet against the polished floor that glowed with soft blue light. 200 years had passed since humans first met alien life, and in all that time they remained the youngest species in the room, barely noticed, rarely respected. Minji stopped in the center of the circular chamber. Above her, seats rose in rings like an enormous amphitheater. Hundreds of alien beings sat watching her. Some had bodies made of crystal that sparkled in the light. Others were covered in thick armor like insects. A few were just floating clouds of energy that pulsed with colors she couldn't name. Ambassador Kong. The voice came from everywhere at once. High Arbiter Thelvan, leader of the council, spoke with a sound like singing glass. His body was tall and made of clear crystal that bent the light into rainbows. Your species has been building something in secret. A hologram appeared in the air between them. Minji recognized it immediately, blurry images taken from far away showing the construction yards at the edge of human space. The shape in the images was enormous, still half-finished, but already larger than anything else in the pictures. We have built a ship, Minji said calmly. Within our own territory. We have broken no laws. A massive creature leaned forward from one of the high seats. Commander Vexnoth of the Krell looked like a giant mantis covered in black armor. His species had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. A ship? That thing is 50 kilometers long. No one builds weapons that size anymore. What are you hiding? We're not hiding anything, Minji replied. Which is why we agreed to come here today. Another voice entered her mind directly, bypassing her ears entirely. It made her head ache, but she didn't show it. Mindweaver Lessa of the Zethran spoke this way, her thoughts becoming words inside Minji's skull. 50 kilometers of weapons and armor. You call this a merchant vessel? Do you think we're fools? Minji looked up at the psionic alien, whose body glowed with purple light. I call it protection. Something we've needed since the day we joined this council. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens clicked, hummed, and projected angry thoughts all at once. High Arbiter Thelvan raised one crystalline hand, and silence fell immediately. Protection. Thelvan's voice was colder now. The Council protects all member species. Our combined fleets guard 9,000 star systems. Why would humanity need such a massive warship? Minji took a breath. She'd been waiting for this question. Mars colony. 7 million dead. 213 years ago. The chamber went quiet. Every species here remembered that day even if they barely cared about it. Pirates called the Rosalim had attacked the human colony on Mars. It was supposed to be safe. The Council promised protection. But the Council fleet arrived 3 days late. By then everyone was dead. That was a tragedy, Thelvan said carefully. But it was also rare. Such raids almost never happen in Council space. Almost never, Minji repeated. But it happened to us. We were told to trust the Council. We trusted. Our people died. She paused, letting her words sink in. So we decided to never be helpless again. Commander Vexnotha's mandibles clicked in anger. You blame us? Your colony was poorly defended because your species was new and inexperienced. Perhaps, Minji agreed. But we learned our lesson. In the end, our survival is our own responsibility. Mindweaver Lessa's voice pressed into everyone's minds. You will bring this vessel here. Now, we will inspect it and decide if it threatens the peace. Minji nodded. Admiral Taeyong Park is already coming. The UNS Indomitable will arrive in 6 hours. Thelvan tilted his head, surprised. You knew we would demand this. We've known for months that your spies were watching us, Minji said simply. We're ready to show you everything. And if we order you to destroy this ship? Vexnoth challenged. Minji smiled slightly. Then every small species in this council will wonder if you truly protect them, or just control them. I'm sure that will be an interesting conversation. The threat was clear. The elder races had ruled for thousands of years by being the strongest. If they attacked humanity for building defenses, every other weak species would start to question everything. High Arbiter Thelvan was silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke. 6 hours. We will inspect your ship. If it truly is only for defense, there will be no problem. But if we find you are lying... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Minji bowed and turned to leave. As she walked through the huge doors, her assistant Jehun Lee appeared beside her. They're scared, he whispered. Good, Minji replied quietly. In 6 hours, they'll understand what humans become when we decide never to be victims again. The Indomitable was coming. And the galaxy wasn't ready. 6 hours felt like 6 days. Station Concordia buzzed with activity as warships from dozens of species moved into position around the station. The Council wasn't taking chances. If humanity's ship proved hostile, they wanted to be ready. Minji stood in the observation deck watching the stars. Beside her, Jihun checked his data pad nervously. 17 battle cruisers, 43 destroyers, and over 200 support craft. They're preparing for war. They're preparing for what they think is war, Minji corrected. They have no idea what's actually coming. On the Council command bridge, High Arbiter Thelvan studied the tactical displays. Commander Vexnoth stood nearby, his armored body tense. My fleet is in position. If this human ship makes one wrong move, we can disable it in minutes. Can you? Mindweaver Lesa's voice echoed in his mind. I sense great confidence from you, Commander. But I also sense doubt. Before Vexnoth could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A technician's voice cracked over the speakers. Massive energy signature detected. Something's coming out of faster-than-light travel. Position. Thelvan demanded. 10,000 kilometers and closing. High Arbiter, the mass readings can't be correct. Nothing that size should be able to move. The view screens flickered to life. At first there was nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then reality seemed to tear open as something enormous dropped out of FTL travel. The UNS Indomitable appeared. Silence fell across every ship and station in the area. The vessel was beyond massive, it was impossible. 50 kilometers of dark metal and glowing energy cores, bristling with weapon systems that looked like entire city blocks. The ship's hull was scarred and industrial, built for function rather than beauty. Rows of launch bays lined its sides like the windows of a skyscraper. Energy shields shimmered around it, bending the light from nearby stars. By the ancestors, someone whispered on the Krell command channel. The Indomitable's sheer mass created a gravitational pull that the station systems immediately detected. Smaller ships began adjusting their positions automatically, pushed away by the giant's presence like leaves in a stream. Weapons status. Vexnoth barked. Tracking over 4,000 individual weapons systems, a tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. That's more firepower than our entire fleet combined. On the observation deck, Minji allowed herself a small smile. Jihun was staring open-mouthed at the ship. I've seen the plans 100 times, he said quietly. But seeing it in person. It changes everything, Minji finished. A communication channel opened. The voice that came through was calm and professional with a slight accent. Station Concordia, this is Admiral Taeyang Park of the United Nations ship Indomitable. We have arrived as requested. Requesting permission to maintain current position for inspection. High Arbiter Thelvan found his voice after a moment. Permission, granted. Admiral Park, your vessel is significantly larger than our intelligence suggested. Our intelligence told us yours would say that, Taeyang replied. There was no mockery in his tone, just simple fact. We're ready to receive your inspection teams whenever you wish. On the Krell flagship, Vexnoth pulled up tactical simulations. He entered the Indomitable specifications and ran attack scenarios. The computer calculated outcomes in seconds. Every simulation showed the same result, complete defeat for the Council fleet. Even if they attacked together, even if they caught the humans by surprise, the Indomitable would tear through them like paper. This is impossible, Vexnoth muttered. How did they build this? Mindweaver Lesa reached out with her psionic abilities, trying to sense the minds aboard the massive vessel. What she felt made her recoil. 50,000 humans lived inside that ship. 50,000 minds, all thinking, working, and living inside what was essentially a mobile nation. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a home. Smaller species throughout the fleet were already withdrawing, pulling their ships back to safer distances. They wanted no part of whatever was about to happen. Even the elder races felt something they hadn't experienced in millennia, genuine fear. Ambassador Kong, Thelvan's voice was tight as he contacted the human embassy. We require an immediate tour of your vessel. We need to understand what we're looking at. Minji activated her communicator. Admiral Park, the Council is ready to come aboard. Taeyang's voice came back, still calm. Tell them they're welcome. But give them a warning first. What warning? They wanted to see what humanity builds when we're afraid. They should be careful. They might not like discovering what we're capable of when we decide never to be helpless again. Minji closed the channel and turned to face the Council's transmission. The Admiral welcomes your inspection teams. Shuttles may depart at your convenience. Through the windows, the Indomitable hung in space like a dark moon. Its weapons remained powered down. Its shield stayed at minimum strength. It made no threatening moves whatsoever. But its mere existence was threat enough. The age of humanity being ignored was over. The galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The Council's shuttle approached the Indomitable slowly, carefully, like a mouse approaching a sleeping lion. Inside, High Arbiter Thelvan sat with Commander Vexnoth and Mindweaver Lessa. A dozen other representatives from smaller species crowded behind them, all staring out the windows. "It's even bigger up close," one of them whispered. The shuttle passed through the energy shields, and the hangar bay doors opened before them. The bay itself was massive, easily large enough to hold 50 ships the size of their shuttle. And it was just one of hundreds of bays lining the Indomitable's hull. They landed on a polished metal floor. The doors opened and Admiral Taeyong Park stood waiting. He was younger than Thelvan expected, perhaps 40 years old in human terms, with short black hair and calm dark eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decorations. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable," Taeyong said, bowing slightly. "I'm honored to show you our ship." "This is not a ship," Vexnoth said bluntly. "This is a mobile fortress." "It's both," Taeyong replied without offense. "Would you like to start with the residential sections or the operational areas?" "Residential?" Thelvan's crystalline voice echoed with surprise. "You have civilians living here?" 50,000 people call the Indomitable home, Taeyong explained as he led them down a wide corridor. "Military personnel, engineers, scientists, medical staff, teachers, families. This ship can operate independently for 10 years without resupply." They walked through sections that looked nothing like a warship. There were parks under artificial sunlight where human children played. Schools where young humans learned mathematics and history. Markets where people traded goods. Medical centers with equipment that rivaled anything on Concordia. "This is a city," Mindweaver Lessa said, her mental voice touched with disbelief. "You built a city that flies." "We built a home that can protect itself," Taeyong corrected. "After Mars, we decided if we ever had to evacuate, we'd have a place to go. Somewhere that couldn't be destroyed easily." They entered a massive factory district inside the ship. Machines worked constantly, producing parts, weapons, and supplies. Humans in work suits moved between stations, checking quality and adjusting processes. "You can manufacture everything you need," Vexnoth observed. "You don't rely on any external supply chains." "Would you?" Taeyong asked. "If your homeworld was vulnerable, if your people were scattered across hostile space, would you trust others to keep you supplied?" The question hung unanswered. The tour continued to the weapons deck. Here the aliens fell silent. Rows of railguns stretched the length of entire city blocks. Energy cannons charged with power stolen from captured alien technology and improved by human engineering. Missile batteries held enough firepower to level planets. "These weapons," Thelvan said slowly, "are unlike anything in our databases. You've combined technologies that shouldn't work together." "Shouldn't or you never tried?" Taeyong asked. "We took every weapon system we encountered in 200 years and asked ourselves, how can we make this better? How can we combine it with something else? You species have been comfortable for so long, you stopped innovating." A Krell tactical officer was frantically scanning everything, trying to understand the systems. His mandibles clicked in agitation. "These kinetic barriers, they're generating power levels we thought were impossible." "How?" "Desperation," Taeyong said simply. "When you're the weakest species in the galaxy, you find ways to become stronger. Or you die." They reached the bridge finally. It was smaller than expected, filled with screens and holographic displays. Junior officers worked at various stations, monitoring thousands of systems simultaneously. At the center was a single chair, the Admiral's command seat. "How many of these ships have you built?" Thelvan asked quietly. Taeyong was silent for a moment. Then he gestured to a star map on the main screen. It showed human space, a small cluster of systems on the galactic edge. 3 points glowed brighter than others. 3 more are under construction, he said. They'll be operational within 5 years. The council representatives exchanged glances. 4 of these ships. 4 mobile fortresses, each capable of defending itself against entire fleets. Why? Mindweaver Lessa asked. Why do you need such power? Taeyong turned to face them all. His expression was neither angry nor proud, just tired. Because 7 million of our people died while we waited for help that came too late. Because in our first week of galactic contact, we learned that the strong survive and the weak are forgotten. Because every human alive today knows someone who died on Mars. He walked to the view screen, looking out at the council fleet surrounding his ship. You elder races ended war among yourselves millennia ago. You forgot what it means to fight for survival. We haven't. Every human child learns the lesson. Be strong enough that no one dares attack you or be fast enough to run away. We chose strength. You could conquer systems with this power, Vexnoth said. We could, Taeyang agreed. But we won't. This ship exists for one purpose, to make sure humanity never experiences another Mars colony. Not to attack, but to ensure no one can attack us without facing consequences they can't accept. Thelvan looked around the bridge, seeing young human faces at every station. They weren't warriors hungry for battle. They were people doing a job, protecting their families. You've changed the balance of power in the galaxy, Thelvan said. No, Taeyang replied. We've just ensured we have a place in it. The council chamber had never been so full. Every member species sent representatives, even those who rarely attended meetings. Word had spread quickly, humanity had changed everything and no one knew what would happen next. High Arbiter Thelvan stood at the center of the chamber. For the first time in his 3-century career, he looked uncertain. The inspection is complete. We must now decide how to respond to humanity's development. Respond. A representative from the Kvalesh species rose, his small body trembling with fear. You mean decide how to survive? Did you see that thing? One ship could destroy our entire homeworld. Exactly. Commander Vexnoth slammed his armored fist on his seat's armrest. This cannot stand. No single species should possess such power. We must demand immediate disarmament before they grow even stronger. On what grounds? Another voice called out. A delegate from the Tauran, a species barely more advanced than humans, stood up. They built it in their own space. They broke no laws. If we attack them for becoming strong, what message does that send to the rest of us? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the smaller species. They saw what the elder races refused to acknowledge. If the council could destroy humanity for building defenses, none of them were truly safe. Mindweaver Lessa projected her thoughts across the chamber. I touched the minds aboard that vessel. What I found disturbs me more than the weapons. What did you sense? Thelvan asked. Strategy. Thousands of years of human warfare compressed into their military doctrine. These beings evolved fighting each other on a single planet for millennia. They've studied every battle, every tactic, every method of killing their own kind. She paused. They didn't just learn our technology. They applied lessons we never had to learn. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The elder races had achieved peace among themselves millions of years ago. They'd forgotten how to truly fight. Humanity had been at war with itself until recently. They remembered everything. Then we strike now, Vexnoth declared. Before they complete the other 3 ships. Before they become unstoppable. And start a war we cannot win? Thelvan's voice was sharp. Did you run the simulations, Commander? I did. Even with our combined fleets, the casualties would be catastrophic. And that's assuming they haven't hidden other surprises. Far from the debate, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Taeyang sat in his ready room with his senior officers. Lieutenant Commander Yunji Nam paced nervously. They're debating whether to attack us. Sensors show their fleets repositioning for assault formations. Let them debate, Taeyang said calmly. We knew this was possible. Possible? Captain Miho Choi leaned forward. Sir, if they attack, we'll have to defend ourselves. That means killing potentially thousands of aliens. Is that really what we want? What I want, Taeyang said quietly, is for my grandchildren to grow up without fear. What I want is for humanity to never lose another 7 million people because we were too weak to protect ourselves. What I want doesn't matter, only what we must do. And if they force our hand? Yunji asked. Taeyang stood and walked to the window looking out at the council fleet. Then we show them exactly what humanity is capable of. And we pray they're wise enough to stop before we have to show them everything. Back in the council chamber, an unexpected voice spoke up. Ambassador Minji had been sitting quietly in the human observation section, but now she stepped forward. May I address the council? Thelvan hesitated then nodded. Minji walked to the center. You're afraid of us. I understand that. But ask yourselves, in the past 6 hours has the Indomitable made a single threatening move? Has Admiral Park or any human representative spoken words of conquest? Not yet, Vexnoth growled. Not ever, Minji corrected firmly. 200 years ago we arrived in your galaxy helpless and ignorant. You could have destroyed us then. Some of you probably discussed it, but you didn't. You let us join the council. You gave us a chance. She turned slowly, making eye contact with representatives around the chamber. We haven't forgotten that mercy. But we also haven't forgotten Mars. We learned that in this galaxy respect comes from strength. So we became strong. Not to threaten you, but to ensure you could never ignore us again. Pretty words, Vexnoth said. But that ship is still a weapon. Yes, Minji agreed. A weapon pointed at anyone who would harm humanity. Not at the council. Not at peaceful species. At threats. At pirates. At raiders like the Rosalim who killed our people while you did nothing. Before anyone could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the station. A communications officer's panicked voice echoed through the chamber. Emergency. 3 Krell destroyers have broken formation. They're attacking the human vessel. The view screens activated, showing 3 Krell warships racing toward the Indomitable, weapons charging. Thelvan spun toward Vexnoth. Did you order this? No. Vexnoth looked equally shocked. Those ships are commanded by extremists. They acted without authorization. On the screens, everyone watched as the 3 destroyers opened fire. The galaxy held its breath. The 3 Krell destroyers fired everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds streaked through space toward the Indomitable. In the council chamber, aliens watched in horror. Some covered their eyes. Others prayed to gods whose names hadn't been spoken in centuries. The Indomitable's defenses activated automatically. The massive ship didn't move, it didn't need to. Energy shields flared to life, absorbing the attacks like raindrops hitting an ocean. Point defense systems tracked incoming missiles and destroyed them before they got close. The entire engagement lasted 7 seconds. Then the Indomitable responded. Blue beams of concentrated energy lanced out, each one precisely targeted. They didn't hit the destroyer's reactors or weapon systems. Instead, they struck the ship's engines and communication arrays. In 3 perfect shots, all 3 Krell vessels went dark, disabled but intact. No explosions. No casualties. Just 3 floating pieces of metal, helpless in space. Admiral Taiyang's voice came through every speaker on every ship and station in the area. Cease fire. All vessels stand down immediately. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Commander Vexnoth stared at the screens, his mandibles hanging open. The precision was impossible. The restraint was unthinkable. The Indomitable could have vaporized those ships, should have by any military doctrine, but instead it had simply stopped them. Silence. High Arbiter Thelvan's voice rang out like a bell. The chamber went quiet. Open a channel to Admiral Park. Now. Taiyang's face appeared on the main screen. He looked calm, almost bored. Behind him, bridge officers worked at their stations as if nothing had happened. High Arbiter. I apologize for the disturbance. My crew responded to an unprovoked attack according to our defensive protocols. You disabled them, Thelvan said. You could have destroyed them. Yes, Taiyang agreed simply. But that wasn't necessary. They're no longer a threat. We're dispatching rescue shuttles to retrieve their crews now. No one needs to die today. The silence that followed was deafening. Every being in the chamber understood what had just happened. Humanity had been attacked without warning, had every right to retaliate with lethal force, and had chosen mercy instead. Not because they couldn't fight back, but because they didn't need to prove anything anymore. Ambassador Minji spoke into the stunned quiet. We didn't build the Indomitable to conquer. We built it so no one could conquer us. There's a difference. What you just witnessed, that's the difference. A small representative from the Tauran species stood up, his voice shaking with emotion. For 200 years, we've watched the elder races decide everything. They tell us we're protected, but when raiders attack our colonies, help comes late or not at all. We're told to trust in council law. He pointed at the screen showing the Indomitable. That ship just showed more restraint and precision than I've ever seen from the council's fleets. Maybe humanity isn't the threat here. More voices joined in, smaller species that had been silent for decades. They'd all experienced what humanity had, being weak, being ignored, being told to trust in protection that never quite arrived. High Arbiter Thelvan raised his hand for silence. He looked at Minji, then at Taiyang's image on the screen. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he spoke. 200 years ago, when humanity first arrived, we saw you as primitives who needed guidance. Today I realize we were wrong. Not about your inexperience, about our own complacency. He turned to address the full chamber. We elder races grew comfortable. We forgot that peace requires vigilance, that protection requires strength. Humanity, scarred by tragedy, remembered what we forgot. He looked back at the screen. Admiral Park, Ambassador Kong, humanity has proven itself today. Not through aggression, but through restraint when aggression was justified. Taeyong bowed his head slightly. Thank you, High Arbiter. I propose, Thelvan continued, a new arrangement. Humanity will share certain defensive technologies with Council species. In exchange, vessels like the Indomitable will serve as peacekeepers, responding to threats against any member species that requests aid. True mutual defense, not elder races dictating terms to younger ones. Commander Vexnoth stood slowly. He looked at the disabled Krell ships on the screen, then at Taeyong. The extremists who attacked you acted against my orders. They will face justice. But the High Arbiter is right. You could have killed thousands of my people. You chose not to. That. He paused, struggling with the words. That deserves respect. Ambassador Minji smiled. The proposal is acceptable. But understand, the Indomitable and her sister ships remain under human command. We'll help those who ask for help. We'll protect those who need protection. But we'll never again be dependent on others for our survival. Agreed, Thelvan said. The Council recognizes humanity not as subjects requiring oversight, but as equals offering partnership. Months later, a distress call came from a Krell mining colony on the Galactic Rim. Unknown raiders, vessels from outside Council space, were attacking. The colony had minutes before it fell. The Indomitable arrived in 4 minutes. Admiral Taeyong stood on his bridge, watching as the raider ships scattered at the sight of his vessel. Most fled immediately. 2 were foolish enough to fight. They were disabled in seconds, their crews captured alive for questioning. Lieutenant Commander Yunji stood beside him. The Krell are sending thanks. They're calling us saviors. We're not saviors, Taeyong said quietly. We're just people who remember what it's like to be helpless. And we promised ourselves we'd never let it happen to anyone else if we could prevent it. On the planet below, Krell families emerged from shelters, looking up at the sky where the massive human ship hung like a protective moon. Children pointed at it with wonder. Adults wept with relief. Back on Station Concordia, High Arbiter Thelvan received the report. He read it carefully, then looked out his window at the stars. Perhaps, he said to himself, we needed humanity more than they needed us. They reminded us what we forgot, that peace without the strength to defend it is just waiting for war. The era of humans as the newcomers was over. The era of humanity as guardians had begun. And the galaxy, whether it admitted it or not, was safer for it. Somewhere in human space, construction continued on 3 more ships. Not weapons of conquest, but shields for those who could no longer shield themselves. Humanity had learned its lesson well: never be helpless. And never let others suffer the helplessness you once knew. The Indomitable jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading back to patrol the borders. Behind it, grateful voices from a dozen species whispered the same words, "Thank you." And humanity, once ignored and dismissed, had finally found its place among the stars.